Welcome to Health Oddity, the show that strips away the jargon and hype surrounding all things health and fitness to help you live a long, strong and energetic life. Lining up at the bar this week, here's Peter Lant, Paul Bassett and James St. Pierre.
Hello and welcome to the Health Oddity podcast, episode 49. We are rapidly approaching our first birthday, and we've got some fantastic guests lined up in the next few weeks. And we are absolutely blown away to have back with us today someone we have had previously on with us, who I will introduce in a minute, and another very special guest with her as well. But first of all, let me just welcome the usual suspects, the usual hosts. Mr. Peter Lant in Bath, how are you doing?
I'm all right. How are you doing?
I'm exceptionally well, thank you.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm excited about this one as well. A returning guest and then a proper Northern lass as well. So well excited.
And Mr. Paul Bassett, who is in London, how are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm just a bit jealous. Everyone seems to have a tan, and I just seem to go all pink. and I've just chosen. Yeah, I know that's the problem. And I've chosen the wrong day to sit next to an oven. So,
well, you have
it's a little bit warm.
There may be a chicken dinging and going off mid episode, so you can mute yourself and deal with the chicken. Yeah.
It's difficult to say whether it will be the chicken that's cooked or me. I'm not sure.
Okay. And way back, I think it was New Year's Eve, we recorded the last podcast, episode 19 it was. We had Val Craft with us talking about the kind of the broad subject was alcohol and kind of alcohol dependency and addiction and things like that. And it was a really, really powerful episode. And it's unlike any episode we had previously or since, to be honest. And I still have people reference and talk to me about that episode, and I direct people regularly to that episode. So we have Val Craft back. So do you want to say hello, Val?
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you for having me back.
And whereabouts are you today, Val?
So I'm up north with Diane. So I've brought my coach along with me today so that we can talk about a few things. And just off the back of the last talk that I had with you, I've had quite an interesting pivot point this year, and Diane has been a big part of that. So
okay, so we also have joining us today with Val. They are in the same room. We thought we'd be five of us on screen, but there's only four of us. We have Diane Youdale, who some of you may remember from Gladiators back in the day. And Diane now is coming on, and she's working with Val. They're working together, and we're going to hear a lot about what they're doing, how Diane is helping Val, and then some stuff that they're doing together. And it'd be great to hear about all of that. So we're going to have an open, flowing conversation. I think this is going to be really, really interesting. Last week we interviewed, or the week before last, sorry, we had Fran Sneidman on, who was talking about kind of dads in their 40s and things like this. And I think they'll talk about in a bit, but Val and Diane are kind of doing a lot of work for women as well, which is fantastic. And I think that although Fran's work is targeted towards men, there are universal concepts and universal things there that apply to men and women. And I'm sure that's the same for this episode. So just if you are not a woman, you don't need to shut off from this episode. I'm sure there's going to be plenty of stuff.
See you.
Yeah, see you later. And do stay tuned, because I'm sure there's going to be plenty of nuggets and gems that we can all take away from this. So what I'm going to do is basically hand over to, I would say, first of all, if you've not listened to Val's first episode, episode 19, like I always do when we have returning guests, I'd say go back and listen to that episode. It is an absolute cracker. It is really interesting. It's really thought-provoking. And then come forwards and listen to episode 49. But I will ask Val just to do a kind of a little brief introduction about herself, and then Diane to do a brief introduction about herself. And then we're just going to get into a flow and discuss what's going on at the moment. So over to you, Val and Diane.
cool. So my name's Val, and I currently work as an independent strength and conditioning coach, life coach. I don't like to use the word personal trainer because I do see myself as more of a coach. And I'm a little bit of a coach geek. Like, I like to be coached for everything. So I am an indoor rowing coach. Indoor rowing is my main sport. I was previously being coached Olympic weightlifting by Team GB Sarah Davies. The girls are going to smash it out in the Olympics, 4 of them out there at the moment. And I now have so working on my own, I felt like I was working in a bit of a vacuum. And so one of the reasons I got in contact with Diane was to have somebody that I could, in a work sense, have a coach to kind of bounce ideas off and stuff. And I'll talk about a little bit why kind of I chose Diane for that a little bit later on. But so yeah, I go along that coaching sense, like guiding people, helping people through. So for me, it's not just about like movement, getting sweaty, burning some calories. For me, it's about understanding mind and body connection, and working with people. And I always say, I hate this word holistic, but like holistically, I feel like it sounds like quite a cheesy word, but I do like to work with people quite holistically. So I have my own little studio that I work out of. I also do some stuff online, and I'm also back working within a small independent gym, doing some classes and some coaching and some workshops at the moment. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
And you're up north at the moment, but where are you normally kind of living?
So yeah, I'm Swindon based.
Swindon,
So
okay.
yeah, on the M4. So, and it's not as bad as TV shows will have. It gets such a bad rap on TV, eh? Like Swindon gets a really bad rap. I quite like it. It's got a lot of amenities. It's got great transport networks. So yeah, come visit sometime.
It's a gateway to the Cotswolds. I used to live in Swindon from 2001 till about 2007 or 8. Yeah, gateway to the Cotswolds as well. It's great. It's got lovely country.
Exactly. Like 15 minutes in any direction and you are in rural, whichever county direction you've headed out in. I think it's a lovely place to live personally.
Exactly. Move to Swindon, everyone. This is what we're saying.
That's it.
Is this sponsored by Swindon Council?
Excellent. So you mentioned you've been working with Diane now. Diane, do you want to kind of let the listeners, because most people listen to this as opposed to watch it. We do have some people watch it on YouTube, but do you want to kind of, for the listeners, tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of what you've done and where you are now and what you're doing now?
Yeah. I'm, oh gosh, during lockdown, I mean, people will remember Jet from the Gladiators. That was my persona as such, but I've always been Diane beneath. And what I've been doing is, like Val, I've been teaching Group X and fitness pretty much all of my teaching career. So that's like 30 odd years of teaching now. But for the past 20 years, on the back of Gladiators finishing for me, because I had an accident on the show, I decided to go and study something which I've always wanted to study since I was a kid, which is psychology and the mind, and why we are the way we are at various times in our lives, and why we behave the way we do. What are the triggers and what are the sources, and what shapes us as people. So I'm a psychotherapist. I'm also a teacher of counselling and psychotherapy. So I'm bringing on the next generation of psychotherapists. That's quite a new role for me, and I love it. And I'm based then down in Devon for the Hartwood College of Counselling and Psychotherapy. So that's sort of me all completely up to date. And then Val got in touch with me at the top of the year to do another personal coaching session on Val about goal setting, about really bringing into focus some of the things that Val's felt very passionate about wanting to achieve in her life, but realizes on accountability, you can't always do it on your own. So that's how we're together today and talking to you guys. And we've put some retreats together for over the next year or so, various parts of the country, with various focus on things, but just bringing people together, women predominantly, but we're doing mixed retreats as well.
Yeah, I think just picking up on that point, I know what it's like to be a woman in this life, and so I feel like I can speak quite well. I've got to say this. I'm going to bring this one in again today. Driving up north, and I go into the toilets in the service station, and I get double check looked again for being in the women's toilet. Yes, I am of the female variety. So anyway, but yeah, I know what it's like to be a woman in this life. But I would say I'm sure there are shared experiences, and so it's not that we're trying to be exclude men from. Like this first retreat that we're doing, the women's only retreat, it was a good first one for us to get out and it's an area that I'm really, really comfortable kind of doing work within. But I do think there are some shared experiences, but that I think there are some kind of nuances for men in this life compared with women. And I say I don't have the confidence to speak from that side as a man, but I think interestingly, I'm working with 3 teenage boys at the moment, and body image, which is something I've worked with women on over the years, and teenage girls on. I didn't realize how much that's now become a thing for teenage boys. I've got 3 13-year-old boys who are all worried about body image, which I think when I was growing up, there's no way 13-year-old boys would have been so worried about body image. I don't think, not like these guys are, and I yeah, it breaks my heart a little bit.
I can't remember that far back. I'm pretty
I think that's it, though. I think it's quite common that we all try and sweep everyone under the same blanket, but actually there are marked differences in the way people approach things. You know, women approach things very differently to men. They have different narratives, and recognizing that is actually part of the solution, isn't it? Rather than just saying, "Hey, we're just going to treat everyone with the same approach." And I think that, you know, it's really interesting. Personally, from my point of view, is to kind of, I mean, I work with predominantly women. Probably about 70% of the people who apply for my programs are women, and getting that perspective is for me, is kind of step outside the comfort zone a little bit as well.
Yeah.
So
I think it's interesting that you've had to kind of almost apologize that your first retreat is going to be for women only, which
that's a point, yeah.
Because of the way society is now, and like you have to include everybody, and it's like, but you don't, because it's like if you try and do that, you don't get to the right people anyway, and then it doesn't get you're not likely to get the outcome that you want from the retreat anyway, are you? So it's actually a good thing, I think.
And it's interesting. I know Diane doesn't read too many comments on social media, but it was a comment on one of the social media posts about the retreat where somebody typed it up and said that it was sexist that we were only doing a women's only retreat.
You will always get someone, you know, you'll always offend someone, even if you can be the most inclusive and the most polite and the most everything you can. Like I said, when we spoke to Franz a couple of weeks back, who specifically says, well, I'm working with, you know, dads in their 40s, because that's who he is, you know, and that's what he knows, and that's his experience, and he can bring that to them. And yeah, I don't think there's any need to apologize for that at all. And I think I certainly know that from the episodes that we've done of this of the podcast, when we've had people on like yourself, Val, when we've had Tracy Rifkind on, when we've had Lauren Brooks on, when we've had kind of strong female role models, the female listeners have really you know, responded to that and have really been inspired by that, and have kind of you know, it's taken on a different tone with the listeners, which I think is great, because we're 3 guys doing this, you know what I mean? So you know, so we want to try and get as many different voices as we can. So through working with Diane, Val, what have you been working on? I mean, obviously you do your physical training, you have your physical coaches for your rowing, for your Olympic lifting. I saw you were lifting Atlas stones with James Crosley the other day.
I am going to say this, and I don't care. Like, I am literally living my teenage dream right now. I'm not. Like, I swear, Gladiators was a huge impact on me training in the gym. So for me, it's not just like pursuing like adult dreams and goals that I've got. Like, there is an element of fulfilling a little like teenage dream. Like, you know, it's fantastic for me. And what I would say off the back of that is if you do have dreams and goals, go make them happen. Because there are things like one of my friends that's known me for a really long time said, "Oh my God, you are actually living your dream." I'm like, yes, this is amazing. So yeah, the session with James was awesome. Just brilliant.
I think most people are really nice, aren't they? That's what we've found doing this podcast. You approach people who you perceive as being, you know, world-class global kind of authorities, and you're not sure how they're going to respond. But if you actually reach out to people and just say, "Do you mind if we have a chat? Do you want to come on the podcast?" Most people are very, very polite and very kind and very, very open to talking to you, aren't so people?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no.
And I think my first experience of that was with Dan John, actually. That was meeting him and developing a mentorship and then a friendship with him. That was really pivotal for me. And then I'm having a similar experience here right now. So it's really good. So yeah, I'm going to pick back up on, so anybody that didn't hear the podcast before, it probably would be a really interesting listen. So I came on before specifically to kind of talk about the troubles that I'd had with alcohol. And it's an area that I've wanted to speak out on because I think I kind of identify as a high functioning dependent on alcohol, and it was for sleep. So mine was a very specific reason for misusing alcohol. It was around sleep anxiety. And so when I started talking about difficulties that I was having with alcohol, I thought I could kind of get away with it and just talk about the issues with alcohol without talking about the underlying reasons underneath that, quite naively, I think. And then interestingly, around the time that I was speaking to you guys, I had a very difficult personal situation that unfolded where somebody very close to me, who was quite well embedded in my healing journey, did something that was quite incongruent with that healing journey, and I experienced some mistrust, and it threw up some really, really difficult emotions for me. So the reason that I actually got into trouble with alcohol in the first place was because of a post-traumatic stress disorder symptom. So years back, it was about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, an incident happened within a workplace, and this is the first time the PTSD symptom reared its ugly head. And it's a very overwhelming feeling. I don't think it's appropriate to go into that in this podcast, but if I can just convey that it is extremely overbearing, overpowering, and it's not a nice. I get a physical sensation and an anxiety that comes on that is like nothing else. I think the only thing I can describe it as, and I don't know what this feels like, but this is what I would imagine, is if you were stood in Flanders Fields about to go over the top, that's the kind of level of anxiety that I feel, I think. And interestingly, in the post-traumatic stress response, so what happens, I don't know how many people kind of know or understand that the human brain is kind of made up, that the longest standing part is our emotional side. And it's the strongest bit of our brain. Our cognitive bit actually is it's a lot less well developed, in the sense that it hasn't been around for us quite as long. And that's why we kind of go into these patterns of behavior that are like kind of, I guess, like caveman woman patterns, that that cognitive side isn't as well developed in the same way. That emotional brain takes over. So in a PTSD response, the brain can bypass the cognitive processing bit. So normally if something happens, you can get that check-in with the cognitive side of the brain as to, am I really unsafe here? Do I need to overreact here? Or like, can I calm down now? And when you have a PTSD trigger, that bit goes. So I've got no cognitive control over the emotional response that happens. So once my PTSD symptom gets activated, I can be up in that elevated stress response with that level of anxiety and the physical symptom that I feel, just until it decides to switch back off, basically. So it becomes really overpowering. So the first time that this got activated for me is when I got in trouble with alcohol, because at that time I was trying all different therapies, and unfortunately there wasn't anything that I tried at that point in time that helped me. And I soon discovered that if I drank alcohol to go to sleep, I'd wake up the next day, bada bing, PTSD symptom gone. And that's how I got into trouble the first time. It was to deal with this stress response. And interestingly, so that at the time I was speaking to you guys, it had just been reactivated maybe a couple of weeks before that, but I wasn't in a position emotionally myself to be able to talk about the whys and wherefores behind that. And I was just kind of processing that myself. And I thought that I would be able to maybe get through this PTSD trigger quicker than ended up happening. And I think week upon week at that point in time, so from kind of mid to end of December, I was being triggered 4 to 5 times per week. So kind of 4 to 5 nights per week, I was plagued by this symptom, and it was going on week after week. And I tried a couple of different therapies, and nothing was helping it to move on. I think the mistrust in that close relationship with somebody, I think it kind of hit a nerve very deeply. And I didn't really know how I didn't know how I was going to fix that. I didn't know how I had moments with my mum, like in absolute tears, worried about this PTSD symptom and worried about returning to alcohol, because I was in that much of a state of despair that I was like, I can see how I got into trouble with alcohol the first time now. And I was really worried. Now, I do just want to kind of interject and say, there's an interview with between Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou. I really like Maya Angelou stuff. I really like Oprah Winfrey stuff, actually. And she talks about gratitude, even in difficult times. Now, I'm grateful for that situation that unfolded, and I'm grateful for re-experiencing the PTSD symptom, as challenging as it is and as difficult as this has been, because it means I've been able to delve into that more deeply. I've been able to do some extra work on it, and I understand it even more than I ever did before. And my aim is to speak out and talk and write on this subject to help other people. And so I now have an even deeper understanding. So if those things hadn't happened, I wouldn't have the learning that I've got now. So I think even in the most challenging times, although that can be difficult to find gratitude and find the silver lining in every dark cloud, I am a big believer that you can do that. And so I do have forgiveness for the person that put me into that situation. You know, and I have gratitude that happened, that I've been able to learn so much from it. So in the middle of this, and I honestly, I didn't know where I was going to go with it. And it's not consciously, it's not the reason I contacted Diane. Maybe there was a subconscious element, but I knew that with the work I was doing in my private practice, that I came away from working in the gym full time at the end of the first lockdown, and I was having a lot more in-depth conversations with people. So Dr. Gabor Mate has done a lot of work around addiction, and one of his quotes, just the smallest bit of that, is, "A hurt is at the center of all addictive behaviors." And I go for that. I think when people, whether it's overeating, whether it's excessive compulsive shopping, whether it's binge watching TV or something, or the internet or whatever, I think there's more underneath it than we just need to move more and eat less, is my kind of approach on it. So I wanted to find somebody to work with who had that understanding, the intersect of physical and also the psychological. And I knew that Diane had done Paul Chek's stuff. So you're a Chek qualified coach, aren't you? And I really like Paul Chek's work. Originally, back in the day, I really liked Paul Chek's work. I'm quite into Phil Maffetone's work, and I feel like there's some similarities between Paul Chek's work and Phil Maffetone's work. And so I knew that Diane had studied and was a psychotherapist, and I just thought, I'm just going to give it a go. Like, fortune favors the brave. I'm a really cheesy, I've got a lot of quotes, but that's one of the quotes I really like. And I think that's one of the first, I did actually say that in one of the messages to you, like, fortune favors the brave. I'm just asking, like could I work with you? So I got in touch to get some coaching, and a really interesting thing happened off the back of that. So I was deep in the middle of this PTSD thing. I did not go to Diane for counselling. Counselling is what I got though. And I think it was like the third session. Well, in the second session of coaching, Diane actually picked some of my body language up. The first two sessions we had were online coaching, and in the second session online, she picked up something in my body language and my words. She's very good at picking up on the language that you use. And so then when I came for the third session in person up here, and it turned into a counselling session, and I think you'll explain a bit more about like kind of why that happened. And for me, I think it was huge. So there was a couple of things that happened here. One, it was being seen and heard by somebody, because in the situation that had happened in December, I didn't feel seen and heard. I think it was having a connection with somebody that then I felt like there was empathy in that situation. And that for me rebuilt some trust in people. And I think that had a huge impact. And then I think with having that counselling session off the back of that, for me, it was quite a long session up here, and I think I got enough things out, and we talked through enough stuff for me to be able to move forward into the coaching working relationship, and also put some of these business ideas to Diane, which she was quite up for kind of looking into and working with me on. And I'm just going to read this quote because this is from some of Brené Brown's work, but I think this is what happened. And so if I think there's anybody that's out there dealing with something really deep, I think this really was a key for me, and it's been a pivotal point for me this year, and has taken me out of that despair that I felt with the PTSD symptom, the worry about returning to alcohol, which I can't tell you how much of a relief that is, because I really thought I was on the verge of, I was so scared that I would return to alcohol, and I didn't think with where I'd come to in that recovery that would ever be a problem again. But re-experiencing the PTSD symptom and experiencing those feelings of helplessness, hopelessness, and despair, I can see why alcohol was the choice and why I did that back then. It was a coping mechanism. I think we often think of people who misuse alcohol or drugs as just kind of wasters that just need to kind of get some willpower, and it's not about that. It's so much deeper than that. And I can see why it was a coping mechanism. There was a part of me inside that was trying to look after me and keep me safe, and that was the only coping mechanism that internally I found at that time. And then that key out of this, with having that counselling session, feeling listened to, seen and heard by Diane, feeling that empathy from her in opening up and talking through my story, and then being able to move into the coaching relationship and also then into doing some work together. I'm just going to read this quote from Brené. So, pervasive feelings of powerlessness eventually lead to despair. My favorite definition of despair comes from author and pastor Rob Bell. Despair is a spiritual condition. It's the belief that tomorrow will be just like today. In my work, I found moving out of powerlessness and even despair requires hope. Hope is not an emotion, it's a cognitive process, a thought process made up of what researcher C.R. Snyder called the trilogy of goals, pathway, and agency. Hope happens when we can set goals, have the tenacity and perseverance to pursue those goals, and believe in our own abilities to act. And that's from Brené Brown's book, Rising Strong. And I feel like, one, it was that being seen, heard, having that empathy, that connection in that healing process and relationship through the counselling, and then having hope to be able to move forward and work on goals. And it is that, it was pretty nerve-wracking sending you through all of my goals. I'd never before written down all of my work-based goals and shared them with anybody. And I don't know if you remember me being really nervous sharing them with you. And then also, like, I was super nervous, like putting together some ideas of like some stuff we could work on together. But do you know what? I just went for it. And I think that was all of that together really helped turn that situation around and pull me out.
I think that's brilliant. I hope you don't mind. I've got a few things out of that, but there's one guy who I train actually, and he just because obviously there's some extreme examples there and stuff like that with drinking and drugs and stuff like that. But you mentioned shopping, and he went to see a counsellor years ago, and he'd been buying loads of stuff. He's got a lot of bikes and loads of clothes and all of this, all designer clothes and all this sort of stuff. He went to see a counsellor, and the counsellor said, what are you angry at? And he was like, you're angry at something because of how he presented in front of the counsellor. I was like, right, it's anger that you're presenting with, that it looks like, and this is what you're doing to mask it or to hide it or to forget about it. So it doesn't have to be something really destructive, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
And it's just. But also, what you said was the gratitude thing. I absolutely love that, because I think people think, like you just said, that you think tomorrow is going to be exactly like today, and then the next day and the next day. So you don't even want to do anything because you're worried that you can't overcome challenges. And it's not about not overcoming challenges and avoiding stuff. It's about taking them on and having someone guide you to actually be able to take on the next, because there's going to be more. You can't avoid challenge in your whole life. You can't avoid these things. I
suppose I've got a question for Diane then. This, there's a lot riding with any interaction you have with clients. There's a lot riding on, there's a lot of hope. Like you talk about hope, I'm a personal trainer, I'm a coach. People come to me because they want to change their body image, change their health outcomes, and there's a lot that I deal with beyond just the goal. There's a lot of hope that I'm going to be a solution. So what are you doing to start unpacking and moving this kind of process forward? What are you looking for? What are you trying to listen for to make the next steps and guidance?
It's interesting because I've trained as a psychotherapist and was in practice as a therapist for a lot longer than I ever was when I did my NLP and my coaching version of being in a therapeutic process with clients. And something that always comes back to me as a psychotherapist or a relational depth therapist is bring it back to the client, bring it back to the client. Because as a coach, you actively do an awful lot more for your client than say you do as a psychotherapist, because basically in good therapy, you're creating a really safe space for, as Val said, to be really heard. I mean, it's hearing beyond the words as well. It's almost like there's big stuff goes on energetically between, I call it the space between the I and the thou, client and therapist. And it's recent studies have shown that actually it's not so much the modalities or the models that we work with as therapists, and there's plenty out there, and I've done many for many years. It's the quality of the relationship with your client, and that really can be the key. And I guess I've always had a bit of an instinct about it. I've never tried to be something I'm not. I'm very congruent. I love people, and I love meeting the soul of another. It's like I meet the bones and the soul of the person. I don't care how it's dressed up. I don't care what it's looked like, what age and what background. It's kind of getting straight in, because sometimes with a lot of referrals, you'll only get 6 hours with a being. 6 hours, 6 sessions. So I can get straight in because I've trained that part of me to be able to, it's like an odor without a smell. I can sense it. I can get straight into the soul or the part of the person, I think. But then that's about the person feeling safe enough to let me in, or at least to be pulling up alongside close enough to notice it or get a sense of it, even if client hasn't got the words for it themselves yet. I'm there pretty much with all my antenna, all my tools, all my ability to tune in and key into what may be going on. I think that's the best way of describing it. So I don't think I come up with very much in terms of solution for a client, but my job is to help them to find their solutions and find their voice within that, because that's far more powerful. Anyone can read a lot of books and be a bit of a know-it-all and put lots of kind of, analysis and stuff to things. But actually, for me, the real key about good coaching and exceptionally good therapy is your client is at the center of their own world. And you know what? It might be the first time in a long, long time that this client or this person has themselves back at the center of their world, because they'll have been about everybody else up until that point, which is usually where the trauma and the damage is.
I think what Val said herself when she said in that session she felt seen and heard and listened to, and so that's the kind of the empathy there, isn't it? That, like you say, if someone feels safe with you, and they have to be in the right feeling and frame of mind and everything to actually open up and to tackle some of these things. I was going to ask Val, when you mentioned the PTSD a lot and the kind of, and in relation to the alcohol, I mean, were you aware at the time when you were using alcohol the way that you just discussed in the previous episode, that you were using it at that time to kind of deal with the PTSD, or was that something that you came to the understanding and the realization later?
Yeah, so at that time I knew that, but it's just interesting that when I first started talking about my alcohol journey, I didn't want to have to go into and talk about having or experiencing PTSD. I wasn't ready to then have the conversations about where the PTSD came from, whereas I'm in a really different space now. And I'm not sure it's appropriate in this podcast to go all full depth into that, but at the first point I wasn't ready to speak about it. But yes, at the time, kind of 10 years ago when it came up, I knew that it was I couldn't have called it a coping mechanism, but I knew I was drinking to switch the PTSD symptom off, because it was that traumatic to experience the PTSD symptom. So Bessel van der Kolk, Peter Levine, they've done a lot of work around trauma, and they talk about it as like re-experiencing that trauma in the here and now. And because you don't have that, the cognitive part of your brain, the loop to that has been switched off. So even though I can sit here and do grounding exercises, I do a lot with mindset stuff anyway. I do a lot of mindfulness practice and meditation, but that doesn't help me because it's a very strong, mine's a very strong PTSD symptom when it gets activated. So I knew that at the time that I was using alcohol to switch it off. I couldn't have told you or verbalized at that point that it was a coping mechanism for myself. You know, I was over 10 years younger than I am now, 10 years less experience and knowledge and reading around the subject. And that's why I say this time around, having that experience to re-experience it, re-experience those feelings and those intense sensations and understand really why I got in trouble with alcohol. I have so much better awareness now, having been able to re-experience it. So although it's not been a nice journey, I think in terms of wanting to speak out and help other people through any similar type situation, actually it's been super useful for that experience to have happened. Hence, you know, I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from it, and that's genuine. I'm not trying to be cheesy or inauthentic.
So tell me if I've got this off the mark, but it's weird because I don't know if this is an analogy that will work. So you have to tell me if it doesn't. Back in the previous lockdown, someone next door to us, they knocked the house down, right? And they started drilling concrete, and they had this crazy amount of noise just constantly, and our entire life was full of noise. And we got to the point where we were having to play even louder noises in our stereo to overcome it. And I'm just wondering if this is an analogy, you know, with the PTSD, you were having crazy amounts of probably mental noise just kicking off. And then part of it is that you kind of, one of the solutions was to create a louder noise of having something. It's just kind of, and in a way, it kind of cancels it out, as weird as it seems.
Absolutely. I think that's a great analogy, but I don't think it necessarily applies to things as extreme as experiencing PTSD either. I think, and I'm sure you've experience of working with people along these lines as well, is that it doesn't have to be that extreme, but I think we look for comfort, and comfort is very easy in our life to find. And I think a lot of people choose some sort of form of comfort to pacify any difficult emotions or things that we're experiencing. And it's really easy to find those things to do that, which is why for me, it's not just about supporting somebody that's going through PTSD. I think this is a wider conversation around emotional health. You don't get to adulthood without having emotional skeletons in your closet, in my opinion. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, life shapes us. Oh, was that?
But there's a language of, you know, we're all trainers. There's a language of movement, isn't there? There's a language of, you know, all our disciplines have a skill set, but there's also a language of kind of some kind of internal communication that you have, and trying to learn those skills of being able to express complex things. It's not something we're necessarily given as children, you know, and often we're perhaps utilizing very outdated language to express very complicated emotions and complicated feelings. So Diane, is your job, I mean, you picked it up earlier in what you said, is to give the client a language. So what does that entail? I mean, what do you mean by that?
It always comes down to awareness. The first point of change is awareness, because you can't change what you don't know. Do you know what I mean? It's as simple as that. So the point of any change has to be about what is your awareness about this? Tell me your story, even if it's just context and the words aren't quite there. The story is there, and that's what I met. I met sort of the context of what Val was bringing, but ultimately it's then the damage that's been caused in her neurology, which is what you're saying about you sort of get stuck in that loop. But is it neuroplasticity? We're growing and developing all the time, and at the point at which we can actually bring some attention to something that needs, it's like a little torch being shone on a dark shadow. It's at that point. Have you seen it from that angle? Have you seen underneath? Oh, I've seen it from that one that's at that side. And it's about being able to get someone to look at something that is in them, something they're aware of, whether they've got the languaging or not. It's about exposing all angles, I suppose, because in that sometimes client can see something which they've never seen, but it's what I call the linchpin. It's that one little tiny bit that they suddenly go, that's it, that's that point of awareness. And at that point everything starts to shift. So it's like the linchpin of a whole set of bricks, a whole set of cards rather, that can come down. And then it starts to get exciting. It's not easy, and no one says it's ever not going to be painful. But actually, it's at that point I get excited because I know the client's going on the journey they need to do. Yeah. It's like when you said you came for me for coaching, I'm going, oh, no. I call it the silver umbilical cord. So we're kind of running off the hotspot, and this silver umbilical cord, like a piece of elastic, but dying, keeps pinging you back to your hotspot from where you're trying to run from, until that hotspot has been given the attention it needs. No amount of kind of goal setting in front of you is going to be achieved, because you've got to get something out of the way first. And that's what was obvious. And now you've done it. And now we've set the other goals, because that awareness has been brought into full vision.
How do you keep someone moving through that? Because I've done some stuff like this before with I've been on the other side of it to you, if you know what I mean. I've been on Val's side of it, and it's kind of like you get to a point and you've got that awareness, and you're like, okay, I can do something about this. But it's going to be bloody hard work. So I could just go back to where I was and just be unhappy, but at least I'll be unhappy and comfortable. It's like a Pandora's box, isn't it? So how do you, I mean, obviously you've said you create that safe space, but how do you then take that person through that without them getting too kind of scared to run away? Because once you've got a certain distance, there's nothing you can do about it, is there? You're there and you've got to deal with it. And then it can become harder in that case, I think. Sometimes.
Well, I think events happen to us, and then we have the neurology which then reacts to it, so it sort of lives in you. And one thing we did was, I said, I noticed how your hands are here, Val. She was just doing this extreme movement throughout the whole of about 35 to 45 minutes of one of the sessions we did. It's like her brain she was wanting to pull this experience out of her cognition. And I said, hello, let's just make friends with this. Because sometimes our experiences are in our neurology, but it doesn't mean to say they can sit and invade us all the time. Sometimes to get a shape, if it was a shape, if it was a color, if it was a thing, what would it look like? And I get some clients to actually kind of make friends with something that can have been awful and very, very crippling for anybody. But actually, the more we demystify something, the less power it can have over us, until one day you can actually have almost conversations with the part that's hurt in a way, in a nurturing way, that you would as a client, as a therapist, as somebody you would administer to somebody that you love. And it's trying to get a client to understand that the parts of themselves that has been damaged, it can be nurtured or repaired. I love the word repair and repair. Yeah, you get them to kind of get to a point where, even if a therapist like me is not around, I'm trying to get my clients to move to a closer space within themselves. And no matter where they go, they've got their own inner nurturer, reparent, client, sort of a counselor-based type part of yourself, to keep evolving and take care of you when there's nobody else around you. Because that's all we've got at the end, isn't it? Really. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
And I think for me, I think counselling was always pretty scary, and I think it can be for a lot of people. And I think my advice to anybody that was looking for support on a particular challenging situation that you're going through is I think the thing that worked for me here was that I did feel safe and I did feel connected, and I think personality wise, I think for me with Diane, I knew from having seen things about Diane on TV that there was a chance that we had similar similar thoughts on life. And I think that has we do have similar thoughts on quite a lot of things, which is why I think we're able to work together. And I think it's really important to find a therapist that you can find that connection with. If we hadn't have connected, I don't know if it would have worked in the same way. But I do think Diane's skill was that she pointed these things out to me, which sometimes in counselling in the past, there hasn't been that in the counselling relationship. They haven't brought things to me, whereas it was like a proper coaching relationship in a counselling context, where Diane went, I'm seeing this, let's explore that, like you would with a physical movement. I'm seeing this movement inefficiency, let's explore that and see where that is. And I don't think I've really had that much before in a counselling
It's also
setting.
about your readiness as well. I think if you guys work therapeutically, you just know when it's all about timing. When that person is ready, there's nothing that will stop them if that awareness is there and the ability to want to grow, learn and heal. And then all you're doing is sort of dancing around, observing this wonderful process within somebody who's just literally made that first point of your own healing process. So it was, I take the compliment, I do, I thank you, but it was just your readiness.
I think with that as well, just for listeners as well, because there'll be people out there who are like, well, I've tried counselling and it didn't work. And I've done it with this person, and what Diane said earlier is there's a million different ways to look at it, right? And you know, you can have someone who knows one way and they're very good at it. You can have someone who knows several ways and they can use them all very well, but they still might not be able to help you because what Val's just said is there's got to be that relationship. You've got to feel safe, because if you don't, you know, or you're just going to go in saying, right, I'm not going to give this person anything. I've been told to go and see a counsellor. I'm not going to give this person anything, and I'm just going to sit there. Like on Goodwill Hunting, he just sits there, doesn't he? It's like,
yeah, brilliant.
Then eventually, you know, and it's. I think that's brilliant, because people will be out there thinking, I've tried this. So if you have, just keep trying. You'll find someone eventually.
That's right.
Can I ask? So you first of all, Val, approached Diane from more of a coaching type relationship, became counselling, and now it sounds like it's maybe moved back to coaching, and now you're doing work together as well. So kind of what's the kind of current dynamic, and what's Diane helping you with at the moment, and what are you doing together now? If you can kind of start talking about that a little bit, both of you.
So one of the ideas that I've had for a long while is I've wanted to put on retreats, and for me that's always been about so as well as working in fitness and sports coaching over the years, I was a youth and community worker for 10 years, and I came out of that. I've always wanted to go self-employed anyway. And in youth work, we have like youth clubs, and we have ping pong and pool with young people. And anybody that doesn't know anything about professional youth work will probably look at that and go, it's just kids playing ping pong and pool. But it's not. The ping pong and pool is like the tool to be able to work with young people and have some great conversations and help young people learn and develop and grow. And I'm a big believer that that's a two-way relationship as well. I think you can always learn both ways. And I've always wanted to, when I thought about coming out and going self-employed and using fitness as a tool to work with adults, because I think adults need just as much as support as young people actually. And I think there's less as we get into adulthood. There aren't those kind of places to do this stuff. So for me, it was always about using fitness as a tool to work with people. And so part of that was wanting to run retreats, not just let's go and have fun, woohoo. Let's bring people together. I love running residentials with young people and bringing people together and having connected experiences. I think connection is key. And I think connection helps people, whether you're dealing with something this tiny in the world or huge in the world. I think coming together and feeling connected with other people, belonging is something that's kind of, I don't know, something innate that's wired within us as humans. Whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, there is still a need for connection with other humans. And so for me, it was about wanting to put these retreats on. And I did have some lined up and booked, and some difficult situations happened, and COVID happened last year, so that didn't happen. So when I pulled together my long list of goals that I sent to Diane, and she went, retreat was kind of it's one of the ones that I've always wanted. It's one of the bigger ones. And she was like, right, let's work on that. And then you kind of spotted like this surf one, didn't you? And sent me, and it was like somebody that was using surf to work with people around kind of challenging topics. And I was like, oh, right. So I got into surfing at the end of last year as well. Like, I'd always wanted to get into surfing. Previously, my WhatsApp profile picture was a little Lego surfer with a little blonde flick of hair, because I've always wanted to get into surfing. I've always bodyboarded, like mum and dad bodyboarded. We used to bodyboard on the old wooden bodyboards, like proper old school. And so yeah, when Diane sent that through, I was like, right, the first one's got to be surf. And then Diane used to surf. I was like, what? Blown away. Like, she's my hero. Like, go and like you used to what and longboard, and you could do like what could you do on a
Oh, well, I can surf. I'm not very good at the shortboards and mini miles, but I'm a longboarder, and I took it up years ago. I was married, and I used to do a lot of walking down in Devon and Cornwall, or up in the Highlands. And then one day we just saw this sort of like sundial shape on the beach where these bodies had been. And of course, it was a surf lesson, and I just thought, God, that looks like fun. I think we joined the very next day, and within 3 days, I've got my own board, I've got my own suit. And it's one of those things you can either just do really easily straight away, as long as you can do a good squat thrust, because you've only got that tiny window of time. But Watergate Bay, Cornwall, I mean, amazing. So, but I haven't actually surfed in probably about 15 years. So, but things like riding a bike, you don't forget to use it.
That's great for a retreat, though, isn't it? Come along. Like, if you want to face your problems, try surfing. It'll show you. Your problems are nothing. You can deal with them easily. It's hard.
I'm more like King Canute shouting at the waves to go back, really. That's my high level of skill.
Oh,
go away!
But that was kind of that was it for me with so like when I used to run residentials for young people, we would quite often go to outdoor activity centres, and one of the things I really liked was actually for a lot of young people, it's kind of this stuff. Well, I mean, how often do we get to go and do those kind of things that you would do at an outdoor activity centre anyway? And it is about taking young people out of their comfort zone. And again, I wanted to have, with the retreats that I do, I wanted there to be something to take people a little bit out of their comfort zone. So if you are a woman and you want to come and have a go at surfing, and you want to spend some time with the pair of us and have a bit of fun and learn a bit more about health, that was kind of the point of it, was like, yeah, come play in the waves, do something that you thought you maybe didn't want to do. And that's one of the reasons that this one is a female only one, because I think, and it's not to say that there aren't men out there that aren't worried about going and trying something like that, but I think historically sports have been less appealing, I think, to women, especially extreme sports. And so for me, it was about encouraging people, let's just go and get out of our comfort zone, come and have a go. So one of my clients, who I've had some really good success with using mindset as well as the life coaching as well as the fitness, she's now lost 7 stone in 7 months with me.
Great.
And one of the things
amazing.
It's been a great experience working with her. And she has, with the mindset stuff, she's been, like you said, the person's got to be in the right place, and she's been in the right place. I talk about it as I can just lead horses to water, I can't make them drink. So I've given her all these tools and shown her ways that we can kind of work and move forward, and she's taken it all and gone forward with it, and it's been brilliant. So I was going to go surfing this one day, and she was kind of like tentatively keen, but then she was like, oh no, I won't, because of she'd been quite a large lady, and so like putting herself in a wetsuit was something that was like not something she would even have thought really of before. But she had then had a go at it. She'd had a go at, I think, bodyboarding some time back, and so was kind of tentatively keen when I was talking about going surfing. So I was like, right, let's go down to Croyd Bay, which is where we're doing the surf retreat. Come down with me. She's like, oh yeah, but I'm not going to get in the water. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then when we're in the car, and I had to phone the surf school, because I actually had my first COVID jab the day before. So I phoned the guy from the surf school, and I was like, look, I want to come down tomorrow. The waves are looking pretty good, but I am having my first jab. He was like, just give us a call in the morning. So I gave him a call in the morning, and then I booked 2 spaces on the surf school. I said, Sarah, you're going to come surfing. She had the most amazing experience, and she has absolutely loved it. She's already booked on the surf retreat that we've got. And it was kind of that experience as well that really made me go, do you know what? I think there's other women who are in this situation. I'm sure there are some men as well, but I think typically that kind of thing for a woman. So she's 56, this client of mine. I think it's outside of our thought pattern sometimes to go and do something like that. And that's why I wanted to make this one women only, to encourage anybody who's thinking, I don't know if I could do that. Come. One of the things when I looked on Diane's website, when I thought about getting in touch with her, and this is maybe really cheesy, and I promise I didn't nick this from you, I always worry about that, is on the top of her website, it had the words live life, love life. And that is one of the mantras that I use, and I've been using for a really long time, before I even knew that Diane had a website with that on. And I was just like, this is a sign. And I just think it is about live life, love life, and seeing Sarah do that, and she's really, so she sent me a picture yesterday actually. She went to a wedding, I think it was last weekend, and there's this picture of her really enjoying herself, and a lot of the feedback she's getting from people in her life is how much happier she looks, like genuinely happier. Now she's gone on weight loss programs before, and even she's now surpassed the weight loss that she's had previously, but she's never had the same overall life change that she's had working with me, and it's different, and people are noticing this. You know, she is living life and loving life, and she said, you know, before I was just going through the motions, I was just getting through each day, I was plowing myself into work, and now this has just opened a different door for me. And that for me is about, that's what I want the retreats to be about. I want people to have such experiences, be connected with other people, come and do some fun stuff. And if you don't want to get in the water, Diane's going to stay on the beach and do some cool health stuff with anybody that doesn't want to put themselves that far out of their comfort zone. Or if you can't swim, that's no dramas.
If it's in Croyd as well, Croyd's lush.
Yeah.
Devon, right? Because I've been over there a few times, like over staying in Ilfracombe, and there's Saunton Sands down there, and all that. It's fantastic. I love it down there.
I grew up in Barnstable, so if Swindon's going to have its own kind of push on this podcast, we should at least give Devon. Yeah. Barnstable's lovely. Saunton Sands.
The other thing I was thinking as well is it's a funny thing to want to take up when you live in Swindon, isn't it? Because you're nowhere near the sea. It's just like
that's right. It's better than my previous one. I was a snowboarder for 8 years. Actually, the picture on the alcohol podcast is of me in the mountains. Yeah. So try snowboarding from Swindon. Surfing's much easier to access.
I think I have actually seen you, Val, snowboarding in Swindon, haven't I?
You have, yeah.
It was that week.
Yeah.
It was.
What was that?
It was about 3 weeks after we recorded the podcast. It was like the 23rd of January or something. It snowed, didn't it? And like, I saw you were on, was it in, I can't remember the name of the park, but yeah, you were on the hill, weren't you?
Yeah.
I got visions of you being pulled on the back of a car.
No, it was good. I saw it, going down and cutting in and out of a few people and things in the park. It was brilliant. It's brilliant.
I think you make a good, sorry, James, just one.
You go on, Paul.
You make a good observation. How often are we complimented or supported as adults? I say to my clients, it's the only place you can come to where someone will tell you got a lovely squat. It's and because it's like, often say, well done. I mean, I've worked in corporate environments where you rarely ever got, hey, well done, good job, did a really good job there, that was excellent, and you're just supposed to go through life trying to find some inner kind of reason for finding, the kind of inner positivity, and you've got to kind of drive from within. It's nice to have a coach who could recognize that success. So I suppose a lot of what you're doing is celebrating success and giving people something to latch onto.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is so I'm quite cheesy. I have quote of the week up in my little studio, and the one at the moment is an Adam Grant one, and it's something along the lines of success isn't the measure of a human being, it's effort. And in youth work, we used to have, we had accreditations, which are like awards or, a certificate for doing a piece of work. But we also had what we call recorded outcomes. And I feel like this is kind of a way that we should also kind of recognize just a journey traveled for somebody. It doesn't need to be attached to a measure of success as such. Actually, the effort somebody puts in and the journey that somebody takes, I think, is really, really important. And giving people praise for the journey that they've been on. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to attach to an actual outcome as such. It can be just that process, and seeing somebody's travel and their journey along that, I think, is really important.
It's funny that I've got an Adam Grant book up there, actually, Give and Take. I don't know if you've read that one, but like, it's just about like, you just help people out in life, and it'll come back to you at some point, whether you wanted to or not, whether you help people out, whether you wanted to come back, it just eventually will. Great book.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully believe in that, and that's why I think like people have said to me, "Oh, you're really lucky working with Diane." I'm like, I feel like hopefully I put enough good stuff out there that then I don't know how this happens, but I'm very grateful. Thank you.
Can I?
That's all that matters.
with the retreat that you're doing, first of all, can you tell us, when it is, what you're going to be doing on it? I know you're going to be surfing, and who you think is going to be good to go on it, and if people want to find out more about it, where can they go, basically?
So anybody that's watching on YouTube, woo! There we go. Look.
Make a noise for the listeners. There you go.
Yeah, there's a poster. So Sunday the 5th of September. So if you guys want to come and stay down, then accommodation is all on you guys. You can sort that out. If you're in and around the Swindon area, there is going to be return travel. So if you do want to get on a coach from Swindon, it's a little bit easier than from up north.
It is a bit, yeah.
And the reason, when I put this idea to Diane originally, you were going to do some Pilates with people, because that's your...
Yeah, so if people don't want to get their hair wet, I mean, sometimes just putting a wetsuit on and getting your hair wet's nice. You don't have to necessarily be the best surfer. We're all starting out, and if you haven't surfed in a long time, you're going to get thrown around a little bit off your board, and that's part of the fun. But if people really don't want to go in the sea, I'll do some stuff on the beach as well, a bit of core conditioning and Pilates, but also a bit of my core philosophy program, which is a kind of multidimensional approach to health and wellness, which I wrote 20 years or so ago now, when I was a trainee psychotherapist for the NHS. And I had the head of HR say to me one day, "Oh, Di, with your background in nutrition and fitness, can you write something for staff? Our poor doctors and nurses are giving and giving and giving, but no one gives back to them." I went, "Oh, that's interesting." So I wanted to get it really science-based. And I put together this piece called Core Philosophy, or the Core Philosophy Program, which ultimately gets people accountable to their own personal core philosophy on life, whatever that may be, whatever age and stage and where they're at. And it's sort of grown from there. So I'll do a land version of that if people don't want to, and then probably adapt it for when anyone comes out of the sea, if they want to join in. So we pick up points within that. So yeah, we've got lots of alternatives.
Yeah, so we're going to meet for breakfast. We're going to use the surf school, so Surfing Croyd Bay, which is the surf school that I've been doing my surf lessons with, and the guys down there, Damon's awesome, and so I just like to have a lot of fun in life. So I actually had a session with him with the surf skate. So there's a type of skateboard, I don't know if you know, it's really kind of wobbly on the old on the trucks, but it's a way of on the land trying to like mimic the turns in surfing. So yeah, I have my own surf skate, and Damo did a surf skate lesson with me, so I built a bit of a rapport with him. So we're going to use those guys for the surf lesson. So Baggy's Lodge, we're going to meet there for breakfast. And then we are going to have a little walk. There's a lovely, if anybody doesn't know Croyd Bay, there is Baggy Point. So there's a lovely little walk. So we're going to do some walk and talk, and then go and have some Pilates on the beach before we jump in the sea for a surf. And then if anybody doesn't want to surf, then they're going to hang out with Diane on the beach. And then we will have a little catch up for some food in the evening before heading off for the day. Or if anybody does want to arrange their own accommodation, then obviously you're more than welcome to stay over either end of that day.
Oh, sounds fantastic. Sounds absolutely brilliant. So what we'll do is we'll put all the links and all the rest of it in the show notes and stuff, Pete, won't we? I say we, the royal we. We'll put all of that.
I will. Thank you very much.
we will put the links in the show notes to anything like that. And what other things have you got kind of in the pipeline together? I know this is the first kind of venture, I suppose, together that you're going to do. You've got other ideas and other things that you're kind of going to look to move forwards with as well, have you?
Yeah, there are some other things, and I think like Diane's mentioned her core philosophy program. So in August we're doing so it's the first time you've delivered it in a wee while. They like getting it back up and running and having a go at core philosophy, because your aim originally was to kind of get that out and have
2 or 3 other lecturers that will do their own take and their own version of it, but put their own life story into it. So I'm actually, I'm presenting it next month, just up here in the northeast in the village where my mum lives, because there's a beautiful village hall with a conference room, just so nicely positioned. So we're going to do, I'm just going to kind of resurrect it and then see where we go from there. Ideally, I'd like 2 or 3 other people, Val included, who will take a version of core philosophy out there. I think Welsh assemblies at one point, for the schools across Wales where I was delivering it, and a number of businesses were also really keen to try and put it towards the, I think, Key Stage 3 and 4 on the curriculum. And that would be my ultimate dream, because so many people that come to core philosophy, even the foundation one, which is 90 minutes, and go, why were we not taught this at school? I'm like, aha, that's the ambition. Let's get it in on the curriculum somewhere, even if it's in biology or chemistry, but it has to sit there. Or in PSE, personal social education. So yeah, I need to get back to that, and I will get back to that, and hopefully have my lecturers.
Yeah, Diane's just got this very bouncy, ideasy, an ideasy person. I heard somebody use this term before. They said, oh, I thought I was an ideas person, and then I realized I was an odias person. I have so many odias in a day. Then out of all of these odias come like one great idea. So yeah, Diane has to put up with my ideas bouncing all the time.
That's great. Love it.
But yeah, obviously having a youth work background, and we spoke about like the core philosophy and getting it in with young people, but obviously I have that experience of, so I used to design and deliver training with children and young people as well as with adults, and so and having that experience in youth work around accredited programs and stuff. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to get something with the core philosophy program up and running with adults and with kids.
That's my tummy making really bad noises. Can you hear that? Can any of you hear that?
No, don't worry.
It's a gremlin in the room.
Like a guinea pig in the background or something. It's like, no, that's just Diane's tummy. Don't worry about it.
So guys, if people wanted to kind of find out more about, I suppose, because you're obviously working and doing stuff individually still as well, and you've got, in the retreat, if people wanted to kind of find out more, follow you, know what's going on, what's probably, Diane, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or to follow you? What's the best channel for them?
I think val@jetloves.com. So Val hand everything on to me, so there's no personal contact if people didn't want to contact me personally. I'm quite happy. val@jetloves.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Insta @jetloves.
Okay, fantastic. And Val, for yourself?
Yeah, so we've got, so I kind of, I guess, semi look after your website. So you've got, there is the Diane Youdale website, which is I guess the more kind of psychotherapy, psychological, that kind of based website of Diane's. So if you want to learn a bit more about core philosophy, if you head to that one, so that's dianeyoudale.co.uk. And then there is the Jet Loves website, which is jetloves.com. And that's got a bit like, if you want to come and meet Jet at one of the public appearances and grab
Comic-Con.
Yeah,
you're doing Bath in September. I saw it.
Yeah.
It came up on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to go and grab an autograph,
yay! Oh, get to see it.
So there are
So
there are links on both of those websites to the Surf Retreat as well, and there should be links to both and to core philosophy. And then there's my own website, which is beperformance.co.uk, or I am on Instagram at val_the_coach. There we go.
That's very nicely done.
We will put all of those links under the on the show notes.
I've got a bit of cramp in my hand here. Give us a second.
Yeah, that was a lot.
While you're writing all of that down, Pete, Mr. Paul Bassett, do you have any questions, any thoughts that you'd like to share with us? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Yeah, so it sounds like we probably needed to spend some time on this idea of core philosophy. It sounds really interesting.
Oh,
I think that could have been a subject in itself as well.
So there we go. There's a time to come back there.
Yay! I've been happy with that. Thank you.
So really fascinating discussion. Absolutely brilliant to get some insight, and so much I think our listeners are going to get out of this, and it's also informed a lot of the kind of thoughts I've had on how to interact with my own clients, and what I notice is it is a lot about listening, because we have so many ideas in our heads, and it's easy as a trainer or a coach to kind of go and just keep spouting out things because we know a lot, or we're a geek on the subject. But it does seem that, just being quiet is probably quite important as well.
I think for me, having somebody that gets me to question, because I was writing like some blog stuff all by myself, I didn't have anybody checking anything over, and now I've got somebody that I can take that to, and like Diane will go, well, have you thought about it from this perspective? I'm like, oh no, okay, that's a good point. I think just having somebody that can give you a different perspective has been super useful for me.
That's excellent. Mr. Peter Lant, do you have anything you'd like to say or any thoughts?
Loads, but I'm not going to. I've got, honestly, Paul's right. The core philosophy thing sounds great. Actually, I'm quite interested in that. So I'm going to be looking that up. Yeah, and I'd say, like, basically what, like, everything that's just been said there, the whole listening thing, what Paul was talking about there as well. Like you go and you get a. So for the listeners, you're looking for a trainer, you're looking for, or whatever, and they're going to be like, your squat should look like this and all of that. And that's a thing. But if you're just training to be healthy and fit and, and get your mindset in check and just have an easier life, not an easier life, but like a nicer life and enjoy life more. It's not necessarily what it's all about. And you want someone who's going to have a chat with you and listen and, if you can try and get the whole package in one, which is what Val's just said. She doesn't like to call herself a personal trainer because that kind of puts you in that box, right? But you're not, you're way more than that. So I think that's brilliant. I think, so, and I hope, honestly, I hope loads of people who are listening to this come along to your retreat because it sounds great. And I wish I was a woman.
Thank you. Put your wig on.
We need to do a health oddity retreat now.
Yeah.
There we go. That'll be fun. Let's do it.
Yeah, you sort that out with Paul, and I'll do the show notes.
Okay. Okay, guys, I just want to obviously thank very, very much Val and Diane for coming on today. It's been absolutely fabulous speaking to you again, Val, and it's been fabulous meeting you for the first time, Diane. And it would be
thank you all. Yes.
It would be great to maybe catch up a little bit down the line and talk about the core philosophy stuff.
Yeah,
that sounds really, really interesting, and I'm sure our listeners would be really into that as well. So I just want to say thank you to everybody listening. Please do like, share, subscribe, and if you have the capacity to leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to, that would be massively appreciated. We do obviously as well have the Health Oddity Facebook group. If you just go on Facebook and search for that, we can let you in there and you can become part of the conversation. Next week, we have Professor Stu McGill, or Dr. Stu McGill from Canada, on with us, who is the premier back pain specialist in the world. I mean, everyone who is anyone has worked with Stu McGill and references him. And we have Mr. Dan John coming over to the UK on Saturday, the 21st of August, to spend a day doing a workshop. So we will let you know about that and more details about when Dan John is touching down in the UK for a workshop, which will be in Chelmsford in Essex. So kind of the other side of London to Swindon, but we'll be over that way. So it'd be great to see many of you there. And just once again, thank you, everybody. Do you want to say goodbye, Mr. Peter Lant?
Goodbye. Thank you for listening. We appreciate you all.
Do you want to say goodbye, Mr. Paul Bassett?
Bye, lovely listeners. That's all got to get that one in, Peter.
And Val and Diane, do you want to say goodbye to everyone?
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next week with Stu McGill. Take care. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Health Odyssey with Peter Lant, Paul Bassett, and James St. Pierre. To get your regular fix of hype-free health, you can subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find out more on today's and other topics at healthodyssey.com, or find us on Facebook or Instagram by searching for Health Oddity.